Okay, so thank you all for being patient if you're online. Audience here. We now have our board ready to go. So we will begin today's meeting of the Flathead Reservation Water Management Board on July 27th, 2023. And so we call to order, and I'll ask for volunteers for an opening prayer, please. Teresa, yes, please.
Sure. We bow our heads and take a moment to reflect. We want to thank the Lord for the many blessings He's bestowed upon us. The blessings of good health, the blessings of a beautiful day, the blessings of our friends and family, and also the blessing of the opportunity to do the right thing and make a difference. We ask that we greet all the challenges before us today with open hearts and open minds, and that we remember those individuals who we serve. And we ask for the Lord's grace for anyone who is struggling with the loss of a loved one, with the inability to find a safe place, a home. And we ask for His grace for everyone who might be struggling with not enough food, not enough love. And so we just hope that the Lord reaches out and heals us all. Amen.
Amen. Right. Candidates, please.
Here.
Teresa Walter Conley.
Here.
Ryan Noel.
Here.
Clayton Mack.
Here.
Kevin Pitt.
Here.
And Shane Henderson is out.
All right. Thank you very much for the forum. For those in the audience, a regular announcement that meeting minutes are on the NRC and CSBP website. So if someone wants to see, hear, or observe minutes from previous meetings, you can find the minutes on those websites. For off the agenda, any want to reverse the order a little bit and ask if there are any potential conflicts of interest on the current agenda. So, Georgia?
None for me.
Teresa?
None.
No. And none for me, so we're good there. And any discussion or changes to the agenda? If none, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Ken to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
Second by Roger. Any further questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll approve. Okay, any public comments, item not on the agenda, that's a standing public comment section we have here, so. We have mostly staff here in the audience, anybody online who has a public comment?
Melissa is the only person online.
No public comment at this time, board business, item 3.1, signing of completed bylaws and resolution amendments passed on July 13. So is that something we don't need further action on that, or? What do we-
No, Mr. Chairman, I just, it does kind of go under board business, and I don't know that you necessarily need to sign these things right now during the meeting, but I did want to put them here as like things that happen. So we can either have board members sign afterwards, or if there's any other discussion for to add on the signing of the bylaw amendments. And as a reminder, Mr. Chairman, these are the bylaw amendments that adjust the board's compensation, the language in how and what the board can, cover the compensation.
I mean, I'm comfortable signing after, I'm gonna pause the meeting just for that, so. Unless anybody has any questions, I think we can move on.
There's one slight exciting addition is that you do now have your logo on your bylaws. We do what we can right here.
So item 3.2. Money market account, on July 13th, same thing.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like you to be aware that we have the account paperwork that needs to be signed by chairman, the vice chairman, and the water engineer today. That will create a money market account that will earn 4.5% interest rate on anything that's put in it right now. And that goes along with our updated fiscal resolution and will and should be in place for when the tribes in the state of Montana are ready to transfer appropriations, and we'll receive those appropriations directly into the money market account. And as a reminder, we've put some tighter controls on the money market account to protect the large principal that the board holds, and keep that separate from the operating account. And Mr. Chairman, board members, that's all set and ready to get executed when you're ready to have a pen in your hand today.
Roger, we get to sign at the end of the meeting. We'll do that. 3.3, initiating read-only access to Friday Reservation Water Management Board of Bank accounts. Is there something you need there?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, board members, as you'll recall, we also discussed an option for all board members and possibly state and tribal folks that might want to audit FRWMB account activity to get read-only access. And I have spoken with the electronic banking expert at Glacier. She is prepared to give us the appropriate next steps for everybody to get the read-only access. Today, it'd be nice to just sort of reaffirm who all wants the read-only access, and to reaffirm you, basically, I will share the telephone number that I have for you on file. We'll use your FRWMB email address, which are the two pieces of information that I need to share with the bank to set you up. They'll make a list of everybody that would need this this separate online, again, read-only access. You cannot do any account transfers or withdrawals or anything. It will allow you to monitor all of the expenditures, and then that'll all go into a package that the bank will send to the board chairman, and that will be an electronic document signature that they'll need from you, Mr. Chairman, after I provide them this final list of folks that would like to have access. I do remember board member Henderson wanted to have the access, so I was going to keep them on there. This would be an opportunity to tell me if you wanted something other than where we were before, which was that everybody would have access, which includes the chairman and the vice chairman. Even though your signatories on the account, you'll need to go through this step, as will I, to be able to look at the accounts online for monitoring purposes.
I assume everyone wants that access. If you don't, speak up, otherwise we'll just, you do not. So
I do not.
Teresa does not.
Right?
Georgia.
I don't see a need for it myself, so
Roger.
I'll have access.
And, okay, and I would.
Thank you, board members.
or is there some action we need on that today? Or
Well, maybe there's
special, okay.
no,
Really, no, you need to know.
your resolution enables the opportunity to do this, so you really take an action. This is just sort of some follow through, Mr. Chairman.
You done with that one?
Yes, sir. Sorry, I check my phone sometimes at the meeting, people text me because something's not right, so. I just wanted to make that clarification in case folks thought I was disrespecting the meeting forum there.
One of the engineer discussion topics, one of the 4.1.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of items today that are not action items, but they are kind of get us pointed towards an action item if and I do need a little bit of direction from the board. And what would happen on these is I'll kind of go over them and we'll see how everybody's trending. And if they're trending towards us setting something up, it'll come back to you during your August 10th meeting for action. Okay. And but in the meantime, I don't really want to develop things more unless there's a general trend that the board would like to really consider these items. And they are pressing because as we move forward with the water rights database work, these things need to get integrated into that water rights database plan, and we need to make things that are specific to them. All right. So, Mr. Chairman, if you will, I'll kick things off with 4.1. This is a POD replacement, which you have in front of you, DNRC form 644. Now, a little bit of history is that the compact largely drew from the Water Use Act on what items it brought forward into the compact. And in between, when the compact was written and when the compact became effective, there were some additional improvements made by the Montana legislature to the Water Use Act that allowed, to ease known water right issues. One of those known water right issues happened on the east side during a lot of flooding. I can't regurgitate the year exactly right now, but a lot of the historic points of diversions for especially surface water irrigation, head gates kind of thing got wiped out. The stern language from the Title 85 was that if you changed your POD to a new location, then you needed to go through the full blown change authorization process. Okay. Now, because of the meandering that occurs sometimes during high flow events, some of the PODs, a large number in fact, did need to be moved a little bit. And so recognizing that had to occur, but not wanting to make these irrigators go through the full-blown change process, DNRC came up with a proposal for this legislature that allowed for a notice of replacement of a point of diversion, and it is specific to one that's been damaged or otherwise become unfunctional, and that the surface water irrigator can go out and fix that thing, and then file outside of the irrigation department to let them know, hey, draw the same amount of water we always did. POD is a little different spot. We had to rebuild it because the moved, right? I have taken a look at the statute. I have looked at our unitary administration. I do believe we could do something similar through policy if the board was interested. But before I kind of went down that rabbit hole of drafting, because obviously drafting things like that takes a fair amount of time, I wanted to see whether or not, generally speaking, not in a decision-making way, but generally speaking, if the board was interested in this office drafting up options for a more expeditious replacement of a point of conversion.
Thoughts, questions, comments?
Question I have, just reading about a journal, which is really reliable source of information.
What's that?
I say this. The lake issues with the lake levels and the streams that go into the, according to what I noticed, it's something we're gonna have to live with. Things are gonna be changing all across the valley. So I'm thinking, maybe we need something like this. This is what,
Just, oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, yes, I understand the concept of it. One is, I guess, you know, the state has statutes on this regarding how it is limited and controlled and whatnot. We don't have anything like that. So I don't see, to me, if we have something like this, it kind of opens it up to helter skelter right now without having any statute to reinforce it or define it. So, and in reviewing the DNRC side, it's strictly for surface water only. So you can't change a point of diversion on a well. So I understand the need for it, but I think, you know, if you're, you know, the example that was given, if you're just moving a head gate 10 feet or something because it blew out, well, that's all fine and dandy. But if you're moving your point of diversion half a mile downstream, you might be affecting other water users. So I think it needs some sideboards on it before we have a forum to do something. I guess is where I'm at with it.
No, I have nothing to add.
so I think we do have the authority and there's where the state's authority.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I think if this board wanted to put something like this in a policy piece that's supported by a forum, I think that they could get away with that. But you know, we would run this by legal counsel, of course, and I have some similar concerns to what Vice Chairman brought up about sideboards. I particularly do not like that this is a notice of completion. So it's an after the fact, the DNRC form is an after the fact arrangement. But and then I'll flip around and tell you that we do already have a substitute well notice of completion that the board has passed, which is consistent again with off the reservation.
So I agree, Ken. I think we do have the ability under the ordinance to do something like this. I think if we do it, we just need to have the language behind it to support it.
Teresa?
If we have the authority to do it, doesn't mean that we necessarily do it. And we don't want to do it in a helter skelter way. If we're going to consider something like this, I think we need to have legal review and kind of a white paper on it, pros and cons. But I would consider it under those circumstances with proper legal review.
Yeah, I would be inclined to think that we want to do something, but we want to make sure we do it right. So the other piece of it is our version of the statutory language would be whatever the ordinance says. So I think if the ordinance doesn't clearly allow, even though it might have the ability to engaging with some sort of policy, I think we'd be better off engaging with the policy creators, or the ordinance creators. In this, like others, and I think I raised the question, early on, in that there may come times when we want to recommend to the tribe in the state that they consider amendment to the ordinance. I don't know if this would require that. Do you think that concept is important? Probably important enough that maybe we kick it off by actually having a legal input to one, there's our ability to, should we ask for an amendment to the ordinance itself. And then come up with a form and procedure for it. Having said all that, we do have mechanism within the ordinance, I believe, without changes. Right? So someone could, worst case scenario, this I understand addresses the specific need of, well, simple change in the event something like a flood washes out the version. But absent that, that doesn't stop someone from actually going through that process to make that change at this point. Is that correct?
That is, Mr. Chairman, board members, that is correct. However, this arrangement here does not notice the activity, meaning that there's not like a public facet to these. And in fact, like I said, this is an after fact notice that the POD has changed. So that makes it is a substantial difference on what would be involved, just the steps going through change as set up in the ordinance would require preliminary public notice component. And so if you, and again, this chairman, not trying to talk about anything, just bringing up points. No, but if you had a situation where someone's head gate had suffered mid irrigation season, there'd be zero chance of remedying rebuilding the head gate through a standard change authorization. If the board was interested in something that's expedited, but perhaps with more sideboards, as mentioned by the vice chair, you know, that would be a type of remedy that somebody might actually be able to see occur during the irrigation season.
So is there, like under Montana code annotated or ARMs, is there language that addresses this?
There is specific statutory language that addresses this. It looks a lot like what the administrative rules would also look like. And
So maybe what I was thinking, you could provide us with a copy of that, so we'd have a better understanding
absolutely.
of the background on it. And what the limitations are.
So, Mr. Chairman, is this being offered on the agenda as kind of a preemptive strike? Anticipating that it may be needed by someone in the irrigation system? I'm just wondering how it ended up.
Yes, it's started a little bit with the two-pronged instigation. One, the lake situation. Two, the database.
Okay,
So if we want to have this, I need to incorporate it into our active database planning process. And you know, and again, not putting the board members in the hot spot of making any decisions today. but if you want me to develop this, bring you the statutory language in a more complete packet. Possibly even a draft form, some ideas. That you either tell me, in between now and the next meeting, or I think of on my own. You know, we can do that, and have a more developed conversation, but I don't really want to go down that road if this board was like, yeah, let's just do some other things.
Yeah. Sorry if I missed that.
Yeah, I took it as this is something for us to consider, and we agree with the concept and agree with further exploring and developing before we do anything, or we don't. We just hit pause and we just say, we'll just consider it later. That's how I took it. To continue exploring, so. Yes,
I'd say yes, but I wouldn't make it as real high priority, that's for sure. I think there's other things that are higher priority.
yeah. But in that exploration, as I mentioned, I think we need to explore whether or not we should continue the ordinance. And we need to explore what the form would look like in combination with the procedure, which would set those with sidewalks or how this would operate. Yeah. I think you have consensus to continue to explore with those thoughts. And then comment, yes.
My authority comment is based on the section 1-2, that's one, so.
What was that citation again?
1-2, yeah, so.
1-2, yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Super.
Moving on.
Yes, excellent, thank you. Mr. Chairman, board members. We'll come now to item 4.2. This is a very similar situation. Again, in a quick recap, these are things that had developed in the Montana Water Use Act between the time that the compact was drafted and the effective date of the compact. Probably doesn't take it's not too hard to figure out why this one might be of interest to folks, but this would contemplate using some sort of a policy mechanism, possibly ordinance change, which would be a big lift, but to add an exception for wells that do exceed 35 gallons per minute that would be used exclusively for fire agencies as defined under Title 7, Chapter 33, or perhaps also augmented if there's something in the tribe's designations of fire services that would need to be added or incorporated. This again, though, does allow for a larger well that's anticipated to be used infrequently for emergency purposes. This is different than using water for an emergency situation, which does not require a pre-authorization. This is an actual digging of a well that a fire truck would use when they need to fill up. It's a preemptive measure, a preemptive point of diversion that would be developed. And same situation. I'm trying to field board out on their interest on this, and whether or not we should explore having some type of an exception that is similar to this, which would we can assume needs some white papers, some additional statutory explanations of the board's interested in, things like that.
Is this a real recurring problem or issue?
I assume it's a recurring problem because the state dealt with it. I know that in Missoula County, there have been problems with the fire departments being able to put in these larger capacity wells that are again infrequent emergency situation there. I don't have a, thumb's not quite on the heart for you, but nobody has come into the office specifically to ask us if there is a emergency services exception for a well.
Seems to be like a well at a fire station.
You perhaps even in a rural area where they have a hard time accessing water, but they have the fire suppression responsibility there. We might do something, not necessarily on site.
Other comments?
I guess I'm okay with going ahead and investigating it further. It's gonna be. Might be a tough one to enforce, but. I guess something like this, I almost. On the reservation where there is a lot of lakes and. Streams and whatnot. And when there's a fire, somebody's just gonna do the emergency appropriation thing. So I don't know how much use this will get, but I'm not opposed to following up on.
My. As I look at it, it seems like if it would have happened, it would be mostly for communities, not for wildfire.
Sorry, you're not-
Mostly for communities, not for wildfire, rain fire, the forest fire. I typically wouldn't rely on the well anyway, but actually for those communities or rural. But I'm a little less concerned about this one. In our environment. One of the first other questions pops to my mind is what stops the city of Ronan from doing this now? Just putting in for a well, but a large capacity.
This chair of board members, it's known on the reservation that you get advanced authorization before drilling the well now. And the well drillers are very aware of that. So we haven't seen many people going out to drill wells without getting the pre-authorization that's needed. They've heard it from our office. They've also heard it from the board of well.
With license service rules and guidelines, what's stopping a community from doing?
Would they be looking to put in like an 8-inch or larger casing to fill up a fire truck quickly, and that would throw red flags on the 35 gallon per minute threshold that most of the stuff that we permit that we authorize has got. We have that restriction.
For domestic, for community systems.
If a community well is more lengthy application process,
Like do,
it would be doable.
but that's something they could do. Whatever that process is, they could do that.
The difference though being that this is an exception, meaning that it doesn't go through the big public notice and having to, you really got, it's a big difference on the application. It's more like putting in a well for a small residential home, that level of work that's required. So it is different.
You're saying it's different because it's only used infrequently.
It's different because the application process is very streamlined for this type of an exception as compared to what would be a whole new appropriation well, where they would need to go through physical, legal availability exercise and a public notice exercise.
Okay, that's my point. Why wouldn't we want to do that?
I think that the fire departments would prefer to have have something a little more manageable. There, I don't know that fire departments are necessarily, equipped for coming in and doing large permit applications.
Well, then,
Whereas a municipality would,
so then. If we're gonna try to be proactive, I would almost want, given the really limited number of potential of these around regulation, I guess I'd want to know what the demand is. Right.
So just to follow on your train of thought a little bit, most of the communities like Ronan or St. Ignatius or Polson, they're gonna just go to the water plant or wherever, and where they can open the valve and get 500 gallons a minute to fill their tenders. You know, they're not, that's the water they're gonna use. But this would be more for like a rural fire district, and I don't know if there's one for not Bad Rock Canyon, but Round Butte, out by Round Butte, if there's one out there. They just drilled a well. And then we're out on a fire, they come back and fill their tanks. And that would be pretty much the extent of the use. So it's extremely limited use. Whereas the full-blown application implies that it gets continuous use 24/7, 365. So I think that's to streamline the process, because it is such a nominal impact to anything is what this is really for. Is that correct in my interpretation?
I think so, and again, I think Roger and I are probably both a little bit, and we're not sure what the need is, but I do know that this was sought by a lot of the rural fire and districts, you know, statewide. So I really am just bringing it up here as like, this is something that off the reservation has it as an option. Do you want to explore it? You know, I haven't had any fire departments knocking on the door asking me about this issue right now. Probably wouldn't be that hard to ask the fire departments. If I thought, I think that's a little bit of what you're almost getting at.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not a role necessarily, something like this, it might be worthwhile. I get that, I get the concept. Personally. Really would not want to avoid the public opportunity to comment on potential impacts. Because I mean, it sounds to me like this process that this would set up would not include it.
Mr. Chairman, board members would obviously include the opportunity to speak to the exception if this board was going to consider adopting some policy that allow it. So there's some public input on that front, but certainly not in a case-by-case installation.
Okay. Thoughts about continuing to explore this?
But again, I'm sure this is.
Yeah. Continue to explore, get consensus, but I think it's even less priority than the previous ones. It should not be. Further discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. Next item is 4.3, still on emergency fire, but the ordinance does have capacity for having emergency fire use reported and tracked by this office. Now, on this particular 4.3, on this particular year, I am gonna try to talk to board. We are struggling a little bit with capacity, and would prefer not to really go out and engage with any of the active fire operations to try to solicit their estimations of water use. I myself have having spent some time in that profession, the estimates would be the best we would get for sure. And it's certainly not going to be the most pressing thing on anybody who's actively working on one of the fires on the reservation right now is thinking about. And so I'm bringing it up here because we would probably either need to go engage with some of the fire managers as things are occurring, if we really want to try to track that use, or we could lower the priority of that particular compact ordinance water use aspect. And for comparison, I do know that the state has several opportunities to solicit water use for other compacts, such as the Forest Service compact has got some water use reporting options that have really not typically been adhered to. As people find themselves having other things more pressing at that time than estimating water use on that fire.
Question? Please.
Maybe this is an item we include on the agenda when Shane is here. Because he interfaces, you know, I think he's actually a fire management official for Department of Interior, and he interfaces with the crews and the guys. Maybe we should talk about that with him. I think he might have some expertise or insight.
Okay.
I don't,
Any comment?
I think we should just delay this. I think Teresa made a good comment. I think Shane was on the Beaverhead Forest or one of those forests, and so he's got some background in this. And the big thing is just the lack of staff right now to try and pursue something like this. Doesn't seem like it's. It at this time, it doesn't warrant the manpower to do it. Given the other needs at our current phase of development.
If we delay discussion of this and wait for Shane to have a future discussion about this. In the meantime, would you like to see the ordinance language on this, so we know what it says
please.
now? Can we get that? Because I'm not sure the language is without going back and look, but it's probably a good idea if we were to look at that and try to understand what it also now.
Perfect.
See what we're trying to. We can. Because I do think it, speaking of authority, have the authority to say, yeah, it's there, but. I don't think it's probably right at the moment, but there may come a time when it needs to be. And when we're fully staffed, maybe we'll be able to. But we'll wait for Shane and we'll get a copy of the current ordinance language on this. Absolutely, please, thank you.
Perfect.
4.4.
Mr. Chairman, board members, as mentioned, we're going through a lot of the water rights database work. We're contemplating one item that's different than what the NRC is doing. And that is listing latitude and longitude for points of conversion on abstracts. Question here is Has anybody here got an opinion on whether or not they'd like to see latitude and longitude on the water right abstracts? Just to let you know, we can still collect the information. There is a database storage component. And as we're about designing the reports, the water right abstract reports, the things on the reservation, we either, embrace the format that's historically been used, which does not list this information, or we can bring it forward. It's not like a huge expense or anything. Just a preference. Not sure where folks are at.
Mr. Chairman, yes, would provide you with some tool you can use better. It's just gonna improve your work. Better, more accurate.
And sure, we have access to it. Always. This would be more of a tool than other people. Because in the water right abstract, that is generally the most usable item for non-water right expert behind the scenes folks who have the full database access. And I think it might be nice for folks who are looking at their water right to have that latitude and longitude for the points of conversion, like for where a well is, where their head gates are, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's not the normal convention.
Does it, excuse me, Mr. Chair, excuse me, does it require a modification to the database and does it slow us down or is there a conversion issue?
No, it's not going to be difficult, and if there is no latitude or longitude, it won't prevent anything from occurring. I will tell you that a lot of the tribes compacted water rights, you'll see a bunch of latitude and longitude information in the informational remarks, because the state's abstract reporting system did not have a way to reference latitudes and longitudes in the points of conversion information. And so it's not gonna be a huge slowdown. The main database will record that information similar to what is already set up. And so this is just comes down to us asking for the report we'd like to see. At the end of the day, and Amanda is here. She is on all those calls. I don't want to if you had anything you wanted to add, you're welcome to it.
Especially when people are disagreeing with the version that you can actually pinpoint it instead of there's a field, it might be out there.
So I have one question, two comments. So is the DNRC okay with adding lat and long to the database?
Yep.
And
No, they already have it in the database. This would be on the report that comes out after.
okay,
Yep.
so they're okay with that.
Yep.
So two things. One, we already required on all of our forms for that we've got, be it the domestic and in the future, the municipal subdivision, whatever. It'll be there on the form already. So it's easily accessible. And two, the current convention usually is quarter sections. And so that only takes you down to 10 acres as far as location goes. So there's still a lot of leeway for where that point of diversion is really located. So I think it's a good idea because it's already there and it adds to the specificity of it.
Chairman, question. This is the proposal for the applicants.
It's a good question.
We already burned the applicants with this.
Okay.
Yep, and you have approved forms that help to burden the applicants, but in the long run, it helps people because the number of people who don't know where their well is, or which well is theirs, or which well goes with which water right. That's one of the biggest problems that we face in our office, looking at a 10-acre plot and trying to, because often there's a few more than one well in a 10-acre plot, and trying to determine whose well is where. And so this this will future proof a little bit of that not knowing where the well is. A specific.
Person like me, if you asked me to that on Springfield, it's, I would know where.
James would tell you how to get on your phone, or you can come in here and we can pop open Google Earth.
Okay.
And we can get real close enough for us to the latitude and longitude. And then we can, use that eventually, that information, we're gonna collect it anyway, because we need it for our mapping. And all of our new water rights have got like better mapping than the old way of doing things with legal land descriptions. So we're collecting it no matter what. The question is, do we want to have that on the report? It's a slight drift from historic convention. But and I wanted to let the board participate in the sculpting of the reports.
Does the ordinance specify what should be in that?
No,
How did we come up with what the abstract had to do?
I mean, it talks about like some of the general elements of a water right, but I think
So my next question then is, I'm a water user and I want a piece of paper that describes and defines my water right for legal purposes. What do I get?
the sharing board members right now, you get you have a whole stack of them. You get the legal piece that you get is the thing that comes out of this office. With my signature on the bottom left and a witness signature on the right, that is the issuance document. It has all the same abstract information on it, except that that's the actual issuance that's got the signature. Once that's issued, there's this other type of report. So issuance is one type of report that comes out of the database. This other type of report is called a water right abstract, and it comes out, it doesn't have the signatures on it, it just has the primary elements that are on that same issuance document. So the legal thing you're talking about is that piece of paper that's signed. And then recorded in our office and then eventually on the water rights database.
So abstracts are public information.
Everything is public information, including the signed issuance document.
And so adding or deleting that from an abstract has no impact on the legal water right.
I think it has impact in that it grants a level of specificity, certainty. To it. So maybe you have an older deed,
On the abstract.
yeah, just because it's tied in there, it helps to record the information associated with your water right. The same way that a COS, a certificate of survey, designates parcel boundaries. Even though we don't like to admit this, some certificates of survey are better than others, and that some of them offer a little better specificity on where the boundaries of the parcel that you own are actually located. Some other ones take some generalities, like down the middle of the road is where the property line is, as opposed to from pin to pin.
So I was trying to understand for our purpose,
So
the abstract has some, for the water user, legal significance versus their signed document.
the abstract really is considered a legal document for the most part. It's a summary of the water right, and it's what's generated out of the database. And so all of the information that is taken off of the final approval of the water right that's been granted, that information is then entered into the database, and the database generates the abstract. So it's generally a one-page summary of your water right. And when most people go to sell their property, all they get is the abstract. They never get the full-blown filing, because it could be 40 pages long, you know, or more. In case of a municipality, it could be 1,000 pages long. So it's just a simple one-page summary, and adding the latitude and the longitude will just give it more or tighter designation for where the point of diversion is.
We'll get the data information. I'm just trying to make sure we are clear about the distinction and difference between those two documents.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then the water user is gonna need to be clear about the distinction between those two documents.
Yeah, and it's just like, example is, so when we get to it, we issue irrigation water rights or whatever, the map that's in the application is gonna be what is really the area that gets irrigated, but it'll have a legal description with quarter sections, but because those quarter sections don't vary, the map is, the actual application or the approved application is the final say in all of the water rights. So.
So thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways,
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
again, yep, yep. Yes. All right, thumbs up. LLC water rights updates.
Mr. Chair, board members, I stuck this on here because I thought our legal counsel did a really nice job and wanted to share that they helped us by writing a letter. One of the challenges you've heard me perhaps whine about is how difficult it is to manage properties that are held in either corporate ownership or trust ownership, because there's an added need to link the signatory authority on the application to the trust. So we have to have property comes in, it's in trust, and you then get the trust documents that designate who is the executor or person that is authorized to sign on behalf of the trust before we can just accept signature, because obviously the trust itself isn't hold a pin though. LLCs and other types of corporations are sometimes more complicated because to add and remove property from some corporate arrangements may require a vote from the members and some certain number of percentage of interests held by the corporation may be present at an official meeting. I mean, it's a little bit all over the place. We got a pretty good letter that went out the door from about a good way for us to request corporate information. Just going to that idea.
A letter that went out the door to the room.
And it's the letter itself, kind of a stock.
Any interest in seeing that? No?
I think I'd like to see it.
Where do you want to see a copy?
Certainly,
Just send you a copy. Just to see. If Tim would like to see it. Roger?
well, if all these legal beagles are looking at it,
I'm sending it to Eric right now.
It'll just be a copy and read it or not read it.
Right now.
Thank you.
Anyway, just want to give a good word where it's news.
Good, thank you. 4.6 office updates.
All right, off seconds. Yesterday we had another air conditioner vendor come, and we expect to get another bid. That vendor suggested that really the only way we should consider adding any kind of air services is a mini split. citing that, I think that, duct work or putting anything in the basement is a good idea. We don't have an estimate yet from them, but again, they were just here yesterday. And, kind of went over what the options were, and I suspect it'll be a surprising amount of money as you might expect. It was earlier this week, 91 degrees, 92 degrees, but that's it's a little out of hand. So I'm generally, I think we're probably gonna allow people to skip out when the lower level offices hit 82. Maybe go find some shade or something else. If the board has a different number in mind, I think OSHA's recommendation is 78, which like thoughts lower than I thought, but it's just a recommendation, not a hard and fast promotion.
So can I jump in on this just a
Oh, yeah.
So after the last meeting, I think we still intend on sending a letter. We were talking about sending a letter to the private and state about a future building, but I think in there should be some discussion. And I mean, Ethan and I are going to drop. We haven't done that. I did have a brief conversation with Melissa. Melissa's on the phone. I don't expect her on the line. I don't expect a response, but just so you're aware, we're trying to tie all this together. I think the idea that we were talking about possibly another building until we get one built, if we're going to get them built, those options. I think it's important for them to realize that we're doing everything we can to try to do our best to be responsible with the money we gave, and not just spend, but there may come a time when we need to. I think we need to accept that if we're going to do it, we may need to. May not be what we want to do, or we may need to, but I think I'm more comfortable with it, especially if we put them on notice, that this is something, we're trying to find less cost solutions to this. We're looking at potential other building options. We may need their help with some of that. We definitely need them to consider the long-term future and the possibility of building the building for this operation. So all those things should be on the table, but I think we need to engage with them in a way, in a meaningful way, so we get somewhere with this down the road. So my proposal that we still send that letter, we haven't done that yet, but to me, this is a product that we need to at least advise them that we're trying, but we may need to spend it. If we do, we may need additional. Don't know, but I think it's good that we start. That's why I'm at with it. Appreciate the additional information. Any other comments or questions?
So, excuse me, so did I hear you say that it's your preliminary recommendation that when the temperature in the downstairs offices reaches 92, that then people 82,
Yeah,
that then people exit,
sorry.
that then people exit the
Yeah,
building?
they can go work remotely, because it's, I think that's a threshold for, I think maybe productivity goes down quite a bit too. So I have also had the public complain about the temperature. Now, if things keep up like it was this morning, which was quite a bit cooler, maybe this isn't as big a deal. I suspect that it might not always be like this morning for the rest of the year, but that's an option. It doesn't seem likely that we're gonna be able to get anything installed for the rest of this year. That seems unlikely to be this big. But I thought 82, maybe 81 for those downstairs rooms, which makes it quite a bit hotter in my room, of course, you know, I can always come work here if needed, but, they don't have another good spot to run the office from in those first two offices.
Following up on that, just some general sideboards to that. And you probably have already thought this out, you know, about making sure that there's a notice on the door, there's a notice placed online, there's a phone number where people can, customers, clients can call in and reach a person, you know, so that type of public customer service parameters around it, if we close in those cases, I would like to recommend some attention to that.
Still working on the option for the online noticing, but, you know, once we get that website up and running, which I can give you an update on that. I hear you.
Is it stated the tribes have a cut off temperature?
They have air conditioning.
I've never been aware of that.
But it doesn't always work.
And as part of this, the idea was that we would try to engage with possibly, maybe I would ask, Melissa, if you're still there, I know you and I spoke, and I did speak with Rick Venus, and he thought he might speak with you about the possibility of an MOU, a new MOU that where we could get some technical assistance to help do some technical / engineering evaluation of this building so we can determine what better our needs are, rather than us just trying to guess it and go by bids. So I don't know, Melissa, if you're there, I don't know if you have to talk to
Looking at
Rick
other
yet.
buildings.
I am still here. Rick has not had the chance to talk to me. He's been out of the office. But I can certainly work on an interagency agreement like we did before and get started on getting used that technical assistance.
That would be helpful, and I think touching base with Rick would be helpful, because he commented to me that the tribe is actually in the middle of a process with other buildings to deal with AC issues, and they might be able to just fold some of this into that to get that assistance. So anyone you want to touch base with them, that'd be great. Teresa, yes, thank you, Melissa.
Does that mean we're not looking at other sites? We're not looking at other buildings if we're going to participate in some sort of engineering review of this building?
I'm not suggesting that. I think that's just one of
It's just
the
a
several things I think we need to
question.
continue with. And, one of the things I was proposing in like, if we engage with the tribe and the state in a letter, we need to add that we also engage with them in other possible buildings temporarily.
Okay.
Yeah, Roger.
And the last meeting, there's an office subcommittee, I think Georgia
Yes.
and Ken are gonna look into offices, so.
Got it. Okay, so it's just keeping every option open.
Yeah, I think so, and trying to also demonstrate we're trying to be responsible with the resources.
Yes,
And I think reaching out to the tribe and state on this issue and getting that help would be useful. That's what we talked about last time.
yes.
Yeah, we have actively looked for other rental areas, and Mr. Briggs did go across the way to see what is available for rent over by West Schwab. And nice enough building, there's only one office room available in there right now. So we're not ignoring other options for sure. If we come across something, or if you point us in a piece of direction. We are much more inclined to remain in Rodan or go south. Also, pretty tough. It might be a deal breaker for us on, the directly, because that's an extra hour, that is onto the more than an hour. On 2+ hours of drive on the. Yeah. Which. On this line. Discussion, we have also noticed that the basement has a bit of a funky smell to it, and we were thinking we should get the place tested for mold. It's not the cheapest test
So don't go
for mold. It costs us around like this, like $6 to get it tested.
there.
And we wanted to hear if the board had any thoughts about that or other things.
Questions, thoughts on that? On the board?
It's serious.
Yeah,
Oh, yes, that is true.
I think I'm not opposed to testing for mold, but because it is a rental, I would propose we request help from the landlord. At least make the request, see what the response is, because it is her building. Given that, I mean, I don't know if you need action from the board to do the testing. If you were asking for whether we agree or not, I guess the question is, do we agree to do mold testing?
Given the health risk, I would say it's a good idea to evaluate if that's occurring. It could be accelerated during this kind of weather for sure. So just to protect our staff. But I like your idea of having the property owner foot the bill for cleanup if that's the issue, if it is an issue.
Yeah, I think the property owner should, at a minimum, be notified what we're doing, but I think it's fair to ask if she would assist us with that. Or take care of it.
Will do.
And Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I should have mentioned this earlier. After the last meeting, I did reach out to Kara's Property Management, which is one of the larger property management folks here in the valley, and just checked out what options are available. And at this time, all commercial properties that they have are in Polson. The only other property I saw was the Red Poppy. I don't know if you guys had a chance to check that out. That's in Vernon. But there was nothing in St. Ignatius or Arlene. So.
thank you.
Yeah, thinking about the analysis for office space. And I don't know who we would ask, but I'm sure there's someone. Isn't it possible too, that locally there might be available state office space? State of Montana office space, just potentially somewhere in the area that's maybe underutilized or not fully utilized.
Well, for what it's worth, back before I had this job and I wore a DRC hat, there were pretty explicit directions that this office was not to be housed in a state facility or a tribal facility. Because of the desire
Oh,
to demonstrate the independence
oh,
from those decision-making factors. Now, it's a different time. But I also don't know of any state offices around here.
yeah.
I mean, I could you could include that in the letter. Because we're gonna send this to the state comment.
Yeah.
Yes,
This course, so very many opportunities. I don't know.
I don't know. I'll make sure we include some language in the
Yeah.
letter about any possible offices.
Yeah.
Possibly including federal state
Yes,
temporarily, maybe there can be some exceptions. Temporarily until something more permanent is established.
We have discussed the idea of a mobile van.
Sure you have.
Yeah.
You mean something like one of those 50-foot motorhomes?
If we could park it next to one of the important water resources of the reservation and operate out of there. Mr. Chair.
Yeah. All right, any other updates? 4.6.
Nothing from me.
Any other comments, questions, otherwise on office updates or what we just talked about? Other items as needed. That's what it says on the agenda. So,
Yes, sir.
anything else needed? Anything else needed from the engineer's office?
Oh, I can, Mr. Chairman, I can give you a year-to-date report for domestic allowance approvals. Okay. We are at 143 for 2023. 2022 saw us at 207. That's 350. So
super.
Okay, any questions on that? That's it. Personnel policy, do you want to take 5?
Yes, please.
Take 5, who's start last?
Water, coffee.
I see by your own scale.
One more. Back in here in just a minute, so I think we can go ahead and start the discussion. Ethan, so if we want to get it started.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm just trying to put that here on my screen here.
Coffee's time. I'm gonna grab a little bit of coffee.
Hopefully, Mr. let me see if that looks like it.
Looks great on my end.
Oh, good. Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, board members, we've got an updated personnel policy that reflects some of your agreed to items from our last meeting and a few more attempts to consolidate and organize and meet some of the board's comments. Today, if you will allow me, I'd like to hydrate a few key topics and walk you through those essentials. So that, I'm going to bounce you around a little bit, but it'll help our office. We can get a few items under our belts. And
We jump in. So we are scheduled to go to a 5. We would like to hold to that, but I have one item that I'm going to need to talk to the board about. the executive session at the end. Okay, so we're gonna wanna finish that by 5, so I would say, no later than 4:45, if we're still going. I'm gonna break and we're gonna do that.
Understood, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, I need to be.
Okay, yeah, and I do too, so we're gonna try to shut this down by 5 for sure. But just for the board's purpose, there's something that I would like to discuss with the board. If you would please, it would be a confidential matter, so I will call an executive session. So we're good to go right now. Thank you.
Excellent. And, Mr. Chairman, that is on your agenda. I needed to speak with you in executive session too.
Then we should probably start that at 4:30. And then, because then I will do my part after that.
Thank you. All right, well, we'll get started. Mr. Chairman, board members, I'd like to first zip over to the supervisory structure for the Office of the Water Engineer. I think that this has a lot of language. This is 1.04. I think this generally has language that's agreeable pertaining to water engineer being the main supervisor. What I am specifically interested in, we did discuss some of this section, such as the delegations of supervisor responsibilities cannot include disciplinary responsibility beyond documentation and reporting to the water engineer, and those are accepted here. The thing I would like to get some clarification on here is who is supervising me. And this contemplates that I received direction from the board, and I am supervised by the board chair and the vice chair for purposes of these personnel policies. The reason, sorry, just the reason I was asking is that somebody's got to deal with some of my personnel actions.
Yeah. So, board members, thoughts?
I guess, Chairman, I'd like to know which concerns.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I just need some direction. You can either do your personnel issues with the engineers, an entire board. You can have the board and the board vice chair do it. You could have just the chair. I just need somebody, need to know who needs to sign my documents. In what platform?
This is proposed language, so the question is, you agree with that language or want to make any adjustments to the language?
This would be like your evaluation. That's
My evaluation, whether or not I'm still on probationary status, those kind of things.
Mr. Chair, yes. So, the water engineer receives direction from the board, period, like a period there. But is it broad policy direction? Is it policy direction and project assignments? The state receives direction from the board, but kind of in what regard? So that's my question. You could say receives policy direction from the board or direction from the board regarding policies and procedures. Period. Yes, there you go. And then, the incumbent is supervised by the board chair and vice chair for purposes of these personnel policies, including but not limited to probationary evaluation, performance appraisal, blah, blah. I mean, I'm just wondering. And there, you know,
And do we want both of you or one of you?
Yes, no, prior question is, does the board chair and vice chair want this?
Well, I think unless the board. Well, the alternate question to that is, what does the board want? You know, you want. To the board to have that responsibility, or do you want to assign it to the chair and or vice chair? Given that language, if that language were to stand, it would be my suggestion that the board chair and vice chair in the absence of the chair. I mean, I don't know that you want two supervisors. I'm not proposing that. For any other reason than for clarity. If you want the vice chair to be the supervisor, I'm perfectly comfortable. But that's not typically the way it works, but anyway, those are my initial thoughts. But long-winded answer to Ken is, what is the board?
Okay, yeah.
Ken,
I don't have a problem with chair, vice chair, being supervisor, but I think the board should have input.
let's see, a head nod, so Ken suggesting that this arrangement with input from the board. You want to highlight that whole piece again?
Yes, sir.
Put a comment at the first board chair.
Thank you.
Is vice chair hyphenated? I think it is it?
It can be either way, it just needs to be consistent through the document.
Make a note. And does anybody here have a preference? Like maybe, is the vice chair with the hyphen?
Yes,
So the board say after input before.
Yeah, maybe, or you want just receiving in there? Not needed.
just for discussion purposes in your mind, what does input from the board mean?
I think that different board members take, they have different opinions, experiences, and expectations. And I just think they need to be considered.
And so further question, then what is the difference between that and making the board the supervisor? Teresa?
I'd like to respond to that based on some of the experience that I have had.
Yes.
I have been on a couple of boards where for those important personnel decisions, like removing probationary status or annual performance appraisals, then the chair of the board would develop a survey tool or provide the evaluation tool to the board members. And then the board members would use the evaluation tool, provide input, and then input is averaged or discussed. But in terms of the supervisory relationship, then that would be between the employee and the board chair. But the input was kind of the using the evaluation tool, rating, describing the experiences of the past year. But that's just a sample or an example.
But I just, what it was important to clarify, at least be on the record, what we're thinking. Virgo. Right.
I kind of looked at that second part as being like, I was gonna insert day-to-day activities somewhere because it, to me, then, you know, it's hard for the board to, if something comes up and Ethan needs some direction on, or the water engineer needs some direction on something at that time, then he gets it from the board chair, but it's not necessary to consult all the board members, you know? So I look at that as more of just a interaction type thing, but then the big picture things that Ken's talking about, then that gets full board input. That's how I was trying to segregate the two.
Is it performance appraisal and personal actions of these big picture things?
I'd say, yeah.
Is there some language you want to add to this to clarify your thoughts?
Where did this come from? Did this come out of the ordinance originally? Is that where it came from?
I think that the language was part of the original document that you guys sent me. There was an original set of personnel policies. And they've morphed a little bit through some board member comments. And at this point, I'm just trying to get you guys to pin down how you want to deal with it.
And those came from the original personnel policies came from.
Associated employers.
There you go.
And worker
Yes,
collaboration.
got it.
This is always an interesting, I think, idea. We throw. What else to think about? It certainly wouldn't be my inclination. But having something in there in policy that says the water engineer's day-to-day activities are supervised. Begins to put the chair's position in administrative capacity. You know, there's some administrative duties you're going to perform. But certainly wouldn't be my interest in having the chair position be part of the administration.
Question.
So I'd want to avoid that. We can keep the language, but that's just my thought. I just want to make sure everybody understands. Well, yeah, Teresa.
Good point, what you just said. The other place that this makes me think of is, what does the water engineer position description say? Typically in the position description, there's a section in there called direction received, working relationships. So this is a little bit like what's in the PD.
But we want to be consistent.
And then the flip side is, if this isn't consistent with the original position description provided to Ethan, we don't want to do it. So we need to think about what the position description says before we agree to this sort of language.
Do we have access to that right now, or that's something we can wait on?
I don't.
We can, right?
Okay.
And,
I mean,
So,
I mean, if you had something here, like, you could make the position description match this, I think. Do you guys have the position?
Ethan, usually, okay, and this is like a good test, I'm kidding. So, wherever the vacancy announcement is that you responded to, then, and the vacancy announcement is based on the position description. And hopefully, you know, that's all signed by both parties and in a central location. So that's what I'm looking for, because we just need to make sure we're being consistent.
I agree with that, and I would have to look to see,
Yeah,
because I think we had a hiring committee, and I think that committee handled a lot of the, I don't remember who that was. But, we need to probably, dig that up and.
which,
Yeah, I don't know, like, that I can tell you, 'cause I am not in possession.
I
Okay.
think you need to have it, so let's, so on this section, can we, one, get the PD? Take a look at it, then make sure you get in your hands, and then do a comparison, and then have that discussion.
perfect.
I know you're trying to get us to read some language here, but I'd say my suggestion is we pause on that and move on until we can do that. Yes,
This does bring a question about necessary language, or we about to do performance evaluation.
I'm trying to get you guys towards doing a performance evaluation and dealing with some PTO rate stuff, some really basic things that I need.
Yeah.
I needed to get it in. I don't really want to put it off.
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I still, even though I hear you about the PD, feel like we could strike this here. And you guys could sort of set the tone, and we could make sure that the PD matches this. Because you're all here, you can decide how you want to manage me, you know, right on this. And let this kind of drive. Just a suggestion, board, but that way we could just
Keep moving, yeah.
we could just decide this and
All right, that's Ethan's suggestion, your thoughts? Okay. Yeah, I see some head nodding, so we're gonna go that route. Please. All right,
okay, so a quick follow-up. Where do we look to?
I may have a copy of it.
Okay,
I was on part of the hiring committee and I think you shared a copy with me. I have it on my jump drive, or at least I can check there.
was Melissa assisting with that at that time?
I believe so.
so Melissa has her hand up.
And Melissa, hands up, so yeah, let's see, Melissa, do you have it?
Yeah, I just emailed it to Ethan and Clayton and Teresa.
Perfect.
Very good. And then,
Perfect.
so,
Melissa, why don't you email it to everybody, then we have it.
Thank you, Melissa. Is there, can you, Melissa, would you be able to just include the other members as well?
Yes, I will. I'm doing that right now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Look at direction, duties.
So,
That is something.
yeah, go right, first paragraph after.
Well, there would be presumably a section on direction received.
Right, and I think it would be, yeah, down just a little bit further.
Should be a headline
Yeah.
portion, but we'll see.
Supervision,
Besides,
supervise, okay, full supervisory authority, working relationships.
there you go.
There you go, there. Hmm. Yeah. Operates under general board direction, yes. So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
is it possible that within the board bylaws, we also have a section in there about supervision or personnel evaluations or, right? I'm just asking.
that's what we're working on, so we
Right.
can do whatever.
But I mean, why am I thinking we addressed this in one other
You're asking if
document?
it already exists.
Yeah, I thought we
Oh.
addressed it in one other document, but so when you think about it, it may or may not be there, but when you think about it. So the position description, you know, any contract, it's kind of becomes a sandwich, your personnel policies. And then your evaluation standards are based on the position description. But I thought we addressed it one other place, but I might be.
We did address it, you guys told me to put it in the OE personnel policies. So that's
Okay.
how we addressed it, is
Okay.
that we decided that the board bylaws, and I say we, it was really you guys, but I feel like I participated in this. But that the board bylaws would really emphasize board operations
Okay.
and everything, but
All
that
right.
the things that the engineer is supposed to do would be either in resolutions or in the personnel policy.
Okay. That makes sense then. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ken.
this is so broad that what we're doing in the employee policy kind of fits right into this. So I think my opinion, the way that improved language has been employee policy. I don't see any conflict here.
Okay.
I think the only difference is that we're adding detail and we're specifying supervision, direct supervision, because here. Otherwise, it says the position officer have general direction. As opposed to post supervision, so the board provides that general direction for policy, procedures, and priorities. That's a given, that's what this addresses.
So we can adopt policy procedures and directions to determine that supervisor relationship, which is what we're doing in the employee policy.
and-
But
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
we still haven't addressed your concern though, which is this language gives you an administrative
yeah,
capacity.
that's still just a question, I just want to make sure, I mean, I know my mindset. But I just want to, if it's the board's intention that the chair be part of the administration and actually engage day to day, it's not what I'm interested in. But
It's good to know.
I would just like to know what the board is, because if that's what you want, then we'll do that, but I just want to throw that yellow flag out.
Yeah.
This language here where it says the water engineers day-to-day activities are supervised by, that seems a bit contradictory to the statement in the position description that says essentially that the water engineer takes care of things in only situations of an unusual nature. You know, I mean, are brought to the attention of someone else. So maybe we should consider eliminating day-to-day, day-to-day implies close supervision. And that is not consistent with the position description.
Would it tell Teresa if we replace the supervisor oversight, overseeing?
It could be real confusing.
I just, I can tell you from personal experience of working here for a while that, you'd be busy if you wanted to oversee my day-to-day activities.
I just said.
You know, yeah, well, to it, but, that would, take some, a lot of doing, but again.
Not because administration is not an important function, but I think I view your role as policy setting direction. We have administrative office, our job is to set the policies for the administrator to follow.
So, what if we try the,
But how we engage with the water engineer is important, so how, this is important language.
So if we, may
Yeah.
I go into edit mode and I just hop in, I'm sorry. So the water engineer is supervised by the board, period. And then the second sentence could clarify those exceptional circumstances that would require the board chair and vice chair. Would that be a run at this?
Yeah,
So the water engineer, how about, here, let me throw this out, maybe it's not strong enough, but the water engineer consults with the board chair or vice chair as needed when
unusual.
unusual circumstances require. There might be better language, but that's just mine.
That's a good start.
Yeah, that's a good start.
When unusual circumstances deem it
Right.
necessary.
Yeah. Yes,
Terms, even necessities.
So that would be the engineer deciding that it's complex and or unusual, and I say that because sometimes you're gonna run into, because I would think that. I would think
There we
the
go.
administrator, you're gonna handle things according to policy, but. Large kind of things will be things that are immediate policy related questions. Does this make sense to do this X, Y, Z under the policy? For now. Get that authority and then move on.
encounters issues of a complex or unusual nature.
I mean, you know, well, everything is kind of complicated, so I'm hating my own work to bring it up. But,
Extraordinary.
Circumstances. Should a decision be made in the interim between meetings? Those kind of decisions should always be brought back to the board for confirmation. Would be my information. That way the board is surprised that it is happening. I don't expect those things to happen very often. It should be the appropriate thing to do.
Yeah.
have had nitpicky English
Oh,
teacher.
Yeah, I'm like live
Do-
drafting, I'm sure there's some improvements that can be made to what I'm doing here.
I was just thinking, we should shorten that first sentence. The water engineer consults with the board chair or board vice chair, period. And then capitalize the I and N. And make that a separate sentence, just to make it more readable.
Period?
Period, and then.
But what's the nature of the consultation and why? That's only.
Yeah, you're right.
No.
Wow, it's just such a long sentence.
It is a long sentence. It is.
Water engineer. Not the apostrophe. S,
Yeah.
Consult with the board chair or board vice chair. Water engineer. Company issues.
That's
That last sentence doesn't fit now either.
yeah, missing a word.
Well, its function is a little bit off.
Yeah,
And I hear I can make it legal, but it's badly.
The subject first. Board chair, vice chair.
and I'm wondering about the last sentence and whether we need it at all. Because we provide direction through policy and procedures. So, the other question was really about how we and who conducts Ethan's evaluations.
Yeah.
And maybe that, because outside of his evaluation, we have granted him authority in these personnel policies to take personnel actions. I mean, whatever the personnel policy says, that's the authority he has. But there you go.
Yeah, except the board chair and vice chair in the absence of the chair.
Oh, yeah, sorry, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Is this still something you like? Does this need to change?
I like the highlighted part, but I don't know if everybody else does.
I think that addressed a lot of issues.
We could, maybe do this.
It's like putting a check mark on a to-do list. It just feels good to write that up there, right? We
You
did
guys are
something.
great.
You approved
Yeah.
it.
No, sir.
Yeah.
No, sir.
Basically, big job on it.
Yeah.
That. I'm seeing. Hearing, seeing.
That's not approved yet.
All right, well, given that, so.
I think that's good.
As you look at it, think real hard, so we'll see. If there's any public comment, and nobody, no public in the audience, is there any public online? We may have a comment about section 1.04 before we take action and approve that.
If you'd like to make public comments online, raise your hand and we'll allow you to speak.
How many do we have online?
Trying to figure out.
Yes, one public member of the attending on.
Okay. So, remember the public, if you have a comment, please do. Right, seeing none, hearing none, close the public comment section for this. The board is ready, unless there are other changes or discussion of this language. We'll take the motion to approve section 1.04.
Move that we accept section 104 as modified on today's date.
Motion by Ken, second by Teresa. Any final comments, questions? None. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Approved. We now have an official boss.
Right. Now, let's move on to something really easy, like a drug-free workplace.
Oh, yeah. That'll be easy.
This is important right now because, I intend to do some recruitment in the near future. And I have, gained, some excellent help from board member Ron McDonald. Thank you for the things you've been sending me. It's been very useful. It has prompted me to resolve one issue. In particular, it has to do with, drug testing. And whether or not employees in the OE undergo initial drug testing or not, and in general, this drug-free workplace, I think, is probably the spot to house what our policies are on this item, but I hate to outreach and say that we're going to do some drug testing and we don't, or outreach and say we're not going to do the drug testing and we do.
Where do you come down? Where did you come in?
I have only one need ever for drug testing, and that's if there's a vehicle accident in a company-owned vehicle or an accident that may seem suspect at all. So my philosophy, and this is what the state of Montana does outside of their CDL employees, which is a different firm, commercial driver's licenses. But their policies are no higher drug screen. But if there's an incident, especially involving a vehicle accident, then the supervisor could request a drug screening. And some of my theory about this is there's a couple of things, especially now that there's you can't discriminate against its FCA 39.2.131, which is in here and explicit, eliminates somebody from being able to not hire a person because they test positive for the marijuana, because it's now illegal in the state. And then marijuana is not something that can be tested for, like blood alcohol level, where you take a test and it doesn't determine whether you're actively on marijuana, or whether or not you were doing that on your own time. So that limits the utility, I think, quite a bit. But
whatever we do here today, does it make sense to, before we approve to run this time by our attorney?
I would think so.
I mean, I think
your attorneys did look at the drug free workplace stuff a little bit. It offered some feedback.
and what was that feedback?
It's kind of incorporated.
It's incorporated in there. Well, part of the reason I'm going in my head is so I don't necessarily object to MCA 5032.101. But my question is there tribal ordinance language and or federal language we need to consider? I just don't know the answer to that and how we proceed with that. Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, it's also difficult to, it's difficult for me to approve of it without seeing the MCA language. I'm not familiar with it. And the other thing is, OE employees witnessing a violation above are required to report it to their supervisor or board member. And so it takes at least 2 employees, 2 or more, right? If they agree that there's suspicious behavior, right? Reasonable suspicion is what we're talking about. And then you write a written statement regarding suspicion and of witnessing at work drug use, okay?
We do have a reporting section, but just,
Yeah, okay.
This is a work in progress, obviously.
okay, okay.
So that's the bigger thing, we could put off buttoning it up if I did have a little direction on this hiring issue. So if you want to like think about this more, happy to have that. I would like to see if the board would tell me about this
Pre-hired drug test.
screening thing. Yeah. You know, if you want that, you know, I don't. I mean, that's different. It's something that we can.
Well, as we continue to contemplate that way, it sounds like we need to see all of the MCA language here. And I guess I'm not sure who or how we consult with the tribe and the, maybe Melissa can help answer, but we need to understand if there are any tribal or federal language we need to consider. In the meantime, is the board interested in new hire drug testing?
So,
Can we, if you are, can we give in that direction with, in that temporary direction until we do finalize this policy? New hire.
When I worked for the tribes, drug test, not only a contract. So I'd be curious about tribes, especially when it is now, things have changed since I.
New hire required drug tests. They do, to the best of my knowledge.
mhm. They've adjusted the drug panel where they've eliminated, I think, marijuana for those occupations that don't have a federal or funding requirement. I think that's how it goes.
Yeah, Melissa, I see your hand up.
I was just gonna offer that I can get a copy of the tribe's drug policy and send that to everybody if you'd like to see it.
Would like to see that? Yes. It says yes, so yes, please. That'd be great. Thank you, Melissa.
Quick question.
Yes, Ken.
So you're saying the NRC does not have the same policy?
They do not do pre-screening drug tests. And I did not have that with Forest Service in an array of different jobs. See. I would actually. Nothing ever the private sector, I've never actually had to do that anywhere.
You encountered that in private sector?
It was always told me if you wreck a car or somebody thinks you're, doing drugs and blood, there was a supervisor
I suspect it's a bit of a financial issue and also a bit of a social issue. I think we're, you know, I think the tribe has had that in place forever. They also have random testing for certain types of categories of conditions. So that's what I'm familiar with. I'm not opposed to new hire drug testing, but it sounds like it's optional, so we can need to decide if we're interested.
Right, and it's coming up because in working on the position descriptions and the job announcement, it's something that you would put in a job announcement. We would include that there is a pre-hire drug test.
And we will continue to request the background checks. But you know, that will go in things. And I would like to continue that practice. And there could be some relation there, you know, that's why I bring it up.
So let's talk about the mechanics of a drug test. How do we do it? Who does it? How do we pay for it?
They're typically done locally. The majority are done by St. Luke's Hospital because they have a certified lab that is accepted, you know, by various entities. And I've seen the costs anywhere from like $27 to maybe $87.
So do you think we need a contract with them or some firm to
I
be
think,
in place to be able to do this?
I think so. It's uncomfortable, but I have seen it done where the business administers their own drug test. And then you buy the kits but that's a bit uncomfortable to do.
And without knowing what the costs are myself, you have an idea what the costs are, you said?
Of this self-administered.
No, just the.
Oh, the others, I've seen the cost like from like maybe $27 to $87.
Yes,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so my question, I told you earlier, what do we gain by 200 drug tests? Well, not to say, I think that's sarcastic.
No.
Just what? Thank you.
Well, I guess my question is, are we advocating for that or requiring it or why? I don't think any of the existing employees have had to do that. So why are we changing ships in the middle of the stream now? I don't.
I think it's just a question, we're trying to develop the policy, and so future reference, and if we really wanted to go back and test everyone, but I think it's just a matter of what do we want policy to do? You had a hand up?
No, sir.
Or did you have a-
This question still out. What do we gain? I don't know the answer.
So I have just a thought. We've had this vetted by the legal staff to see if this language compares to state and tribal language. So then I guess the other question, to kind of get to your point, Ken, would be, do we address drug testing as part of public trust? Is there some, I'm asking, is there some expectation, since this is funded by both state and tribal entities? Is there a public trust issue here that we test our employees because their salary is subsidized by public money? And I don't know the answer. I'm just.
I guess that's part of where we're at, we're deciding. I don't know if it's just so much the game, we gave the information, but then the question is, what do we do with that information? So I think the question is, if we find information that indicates if somebody has a positive drug test, I mean, then what?
Then you don't hire
Do
them
we say we
typically.
don't hire them? So that's
Yeah.
not what we do, what we gave the information. And I'm aware of the fact that we'll see entry level position get advertised and there be no applicants. Entry level position, because people have been shied away from the protests. So it's up to us to decide.
This is the tribe's policy. It's substantial.
Yeah, so it's in everybody's email, we can. So, I think patient stand. And then if we're not prepared to answer that question today, then we should continue to deliberate on it and come up with an answer. But sounds like we need an answer. Or the absence of an answer, then we don't do it until we decide to do it. I think it's something we can always add, but
The board does have the option to just let the engineer decide.
well,
If the board didn't want it.
yeah, I think the idea there though is that we want to try to have a policy that decides whether we want it or not. I think putting it in your hands is, I mean, you would be fair on one hand, but I would think we'd want to be consistent, either you do it or not. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, we have considered other policy issues and other procedural issues in relation to the position that the office finds itself in, being very short-staffed. I would make a motion that for the positions authorized for advertisement now, at the present time, that those be advertised without the requirement for a pre-hire drug test. And that we look at this and make sure that it is vetted by legal, and we come back to this policy to refine what we want it to look like in the future.
No, that's not part of your motion. Your motion has to do with not including drug testing in the current advertised position.
And there are 4 of them.
Okay, so Teresa made a motion.
I would second that.
I'll say, all right, before we go any further, I have to ask if there's any more comments and ask for any public comment. With a motion and a second, any public comment in this action? Yes,
I just wanted to make
you want to go ahead and step up, give us your name.
My name is Benny Walkie, I work for the NRC. And just like one clarification, when I was doing my job or just search, I was looking at CSKD jobs, they had designated and non-designated jobs, or some with required drug tests.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody online who has a comment?
Is there anybody online? If you'd like to make a public comment online, you can raise your hand, we'll like to see. I'm not seeing it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions before we take action? Is there some more discussion, Teresa?
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
thank you for asking. I was just trying to recall, Ethan, is it 3 or 4 jobs that we're working on advertising?
I will be up to 3 right
Okay,
now, for
excuse me.
sure 2.
Okay, so then I would like to amend my motion that it is 3 positions, not 4.
Okay. Amended motion by Teresa,
A second.
Roger approved that second, okay. Do we have that motion just for that specific purpose? And the second, we've taken comment. Georgia. Yes or no?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay. Yes, yes, all right. Good to go on that, you know. And then we'll continue to deliberate on the overall policy, which may change that. Okay. Thanks, Ethan.
Thank you, board members. I'm gonna now, whisk you away to item. Back to an item that we have actually approved on 5/18 about full-time employees. I'm gonna tell you why I am bringing this back here. I have done a lot of consulting with other people who are hiring right now in efforts to strategize how to best arrange for staff at this office. And one of the things that some other employers are doing is that they are having full-time employees that have the benefits of being a full-time employee, but who work sometimes less than 40 hours a week, because they are having a hard time getting people that want to work 40 hours a week. And so because of that, I thought I would let this board consider whether or not they wanted to contemplate full-time starting at something like 32 hours or more a week, as opposed to an average of 40 or more hours per week.
Ethan, can you give us a better example? Who we talked to that's doing that?
It's I don't know that we are in a public business, so I don't know that the folks that I talked to will be sharing their personnel hiring practices. So just along those lines, I'd like to, not err on the side.
Can you
of
describe the mechanism, what they're working through, how does it work?
The way it works is they have like a health benefit package. And other, standard full-time benefits offered for anybody who works, 32 hours or more a week. And then they will sometimes incentivize folks to work the extra 8 hours by giving slightly higher pay wage when they hit that 32 threshold.
All right, comments,
comment.
Teresa,
Oh, sorry.
Teresa.
I'm not willing to accept this scenario until I know the full costs of our benefit package. And we're not there yet, and I'm sorry, but I'm not willing to, and this is my term, sorry, front load those that are less than full-time till I know what it's all going to cost us and how it compares to the budget. That's just my opinion.
Roger.
So I did the Georgia thing. I Googled it.
I was over here Googling too.
Yeah, what did you do?
I Googled what a full-time employee definition is. And in the United States, the IRS classifies any employee who works an average of 32 to 40 hours per week or 130 hours per month as full-time. This maximum amount began in 1938 with the Fair Labor Standards, which requires employers to pay overtime to all employees who work more than 44 hours. But I think
More than 40,
44 hours.
40 overtime at 44.
Overtime at 44. I guess I know the private sector, that you do get benefits up to 32 hours. That's the lowest you can go. And then you still receive benefits. So that's consistent with my background anyway. So so I guess maybe in one sense, I totally appreciate what Teresa's saying, because I've been harping on that for a long time. So but that's kind of the standard of the industry too, I know, the 32 hours.
Okay, the IRS standard of 32 to 40. Yes, probably, but I'm not in favor of premium pay for the last 8 hours up to 40. If they're defined as full-time at 32 and then get some premium pay at 40. I'd have to see how that would work out. I'd have to see what other employers are doing who are doing that.
But I think then that gets back to our exempt, non-exempt status. If you are an exempt employee, then you don't get anything after 40 hours.
Yes.
Whereas if you are a non-exempt, then you're eligible for overtime.
After 40, but but what is being described is you are defined as full-time at 32.
Yeah.
And if you work the 40, which is an additional 8, then they would receive some higher compensation for that last 8.
No, it would be all same hourly rate from 32 to 40. They just get paid that for the hours worked. They don't get, it's an hourly rate, and they don't get paid a salary as if a 40-hour employee would get a salary.
Maybe I understood I misunderstood the
I didn't hear
proposal.
that as part of the proposal. I hear what you're saying as well.
But they would get full-time benefits at 32 hours.
I think that what I'm struggling with is probably one first understanding, but I think we're talking about a classification of a position. Whether or not a position is a full-time position. You know, we require they work full-time. Full-time potentially means they're working minimum 32 for 40 hours a week. That's the classification definition. I have never, all of my time, even considered the idea that I could only work 32 hours, that I would only work 32 hours a week and walk out the door.
But if
So
you're-
it's the practical piece of it that I'm wondering, how does that work? And how do we make it work even if we wanted to agree with something like that? I personally don't get it.
So I guess I understand the 32, but I just think then their salary is going to be commensurate with the 32-hour week, not a 40-hour week, you know? So they're
The
not,
retirement match goes to the 32 hours. The only spot that you get, really hung up in, we would prorate, holidays are prorated based on your work schedule. So you're not getting any extra there. The health insurance is going to be the spot where somebody who's coming here at 32 hours and getting full-time status is going to get a larger benefit. Now, for a second, although I tend to be generationally fixed more where you're at, that's not where some people are generationally fixed. And
That's right.
having somebody work, there are a lot of circumstances where I would take 32 hours of someone's work over nothing. Nobody. And so that's why I got this highlighted. The rationale of the premium pay on this extra amount doesn't need to be sorted out here, but I would like you to consider which is kind of more of a standard of the option of having a 32 to 40 hour a week, full-time job for this office. Understanding that we don't have to agree to a schedule that's 32 hours unless we want to. All of those things are still bolstered into whatever is negotiated at the position description and that hourly amount and future negotiations with employees, and allows us to be a little bit more nimble. This is very rigid. And the fact that, anyway, that is a rigid definition of full-time.
But yes, at the same time, and I appreciate all those comments and about the generational differences. At the same time, employees typically have a work schedule and they typically have a duty station. And the purpose of the work schedule is to fix that so that then you can more fairly and equitably and transparently deal with issues of overtime. So when is someone in an overtime status? So, typically employees do have work schedules and schedules,
Well, on overtime, we have a section on overtime. It has a star next to it. Overtime is always over 40 hours a week. Even if you're a non-exempt employee, you don't get time and a half because your schedule says you're a 32-hour employee and you work 35 hours. You're not
Goes passport.
it's passport. So we don't have to worry about that until
Okay.
folks get over 40. If anything, a 32 hour a week employee, you've got a little fail safe in there. That said, though, most of our folks would classify as exempt.
Okay, so I always approach questions like this with couching them in success, right? So if you start with this question, an employee is successful if, in my mind, I would fill in that blank with they are successful if they fulfill their job description within the context of the workload we have coming. And we know that workload is huge, right? The first thing I thought of when you mentioned 32 hours is there's 8 hours of work not getting done.
Yeah.
And there's all these applications coming. But perhaps I'm not asking the right question. So the second question is, and this is one for you too, and all of us, I guess, I would benefit from your good thoughts. An employee is successful if we get an employee. And I don't know which of these two I need to be weighting my response toward.
Exactly. Good.
So I'm thinking of workload, right? And I know I've been more liberal on other decisions, but this is workload. And we know there's a huge amount of work to get done. How do we do it without those extra 8 hours? But I don't want to weight my decision too heavily if it means by requiring it, we don't get an employee. And I don't know how to answer that.
Well, yeah, because I take 32 hours over nothing.
That's right.
That is a real situation, because I know how much of the work this non-existent employee is getting done right now.
So I get that it is a recruitment tool. That's why the proposal is being made, that you're hoping you can hook somebody with the 32 versus 40. Another way to approach it. So, because you, Ethan, you have advocated for considerable flexibility in your PDs, which is a little dicey. It's a little dicey and it's a little hard to do, but you could, in those position descriptions and in the recruitment strategy, the ads, you could put 32 to 40 hours. We could try to finesse it so you're not closing any door to any employee. You know,
Absolutely, but I can't do that unless that says 32 to 40 hours.
now, right, but the other point about this, and I moved up, OE employee types are reflected in a job description, which can be modified as needed in consultation with the employee. So we've got to add right after needed. We need to add
You
in.
guys had me take that out.
No, we've got to find some, well, we're going back to square one because the employee is at a disadvantage. What we had you deal with earlier was that people cannot personalize their PDs. They can't personalize it, but if you're adding a whole new task, you want to make sure that that employee knows what you're adding. So there's a difference between personalizing a PD and assigning work that needs to be done. But I'm okay with the 32. I'm not okay with this concept yet of premium pay.
For discussion purposes. Don't like the premium pay either.
Where does the premium pay come in? I don't.
Well, I think
Well,
the
it was
concept
that
is
just-
if you work 32 and
That's the,
the suggestion was that some places are adding incentives for them to go from 32 to 40 by increasing the pay. during
for the
that time.
last 8 hours.
And I don't like that either. But
Yeah.
the so let me I'm having a hard time with this. Now, having said that, I'm
Same.
willing to discuss. So we say over 40 is overtime. What is under 32?
That's part-time, and there is no under 32.
No.
30 hours. It's
An
part-time.
employee this week under these rules works 30 hours and goes home.
Then they better take 2 hours of PTO if they're gonna be on full-time.
Or you get a leave without pay, which kicks you into, you either need to get that approved from me or you could be eligible for disciplinary.
And that's the piece where I'm wanting to be really clear on because. Yeah,
Okay, 31 hours in that, full-time employer or part-time employer.
We will not have a schedule that is 31 hours.
well, according to this, if that's the average. Then it's part-time, it's not full-time.
So we say we have
It shouldn't say average, it should just say less than, period. That average should go.
You're right. You're right.
Other than working, being an incentive to employees to work 32 hours, what other benefit is there to that?
32.
I just feel like I need to do this for Jen.
Yeah,
It-
I
no,
guess
it's
I'm struggling
31
with this
according
too.
to
I
the
tend to be
rules.
more
You gotta leave it
flexible
at
on
30.
employee stuff, but man, full-time is 40 hours. And you work 40 hours and you get paid for 40 hours, done.
Yeah.
I don't see the incentive for 30 to be considered full-time.
It's just,
A lifestyle
People
generation.
need health insurance, so they're not gonna get a job that doesn't have health insurance, but they don't really wanna work 40 hours. That's the incentive.
Well, this.
I don't really
but
like
it gets- so
disparities,
this-
but I eat it
this whole
in.
idea of lifestyle and generation,
Yeah.
explain to me generation difference.
Because it's us.
It's us.
It's 4 o'clock, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Generational difference, it has a two, there
No,
are.
no, in the workplace, for work purposes. I get generation difference, but what, this is,
yeah,
It's work.
it's work.
this work,
We have work to do and we need people to do the work.
yeah.
But so you have a couple of ways you can do it. You can either offer a whole lot more money. Or you can offer job flexibility. Now, I have been hearing that sometimes people won't even take the whole lot more money. Because they just want to work less. And I got it, it's people,
During the course of a week, under these rules, somebody works 35 hours. They get paid for 40?
No.
Yeah. We get paid for, so they do time sheets at 35.
yeah, everybody's getting paid for work they're not doing. And you won't get paid for work you're not doing under these rules.
Okay.
If you don't have leave that you've earned or hours that you've worked. Yeah,
There's like one employee decides, I'm gonna work 32 hours a week.
well,
They got 3 or 4 employees. All of a sudden, all of them decide, well, that person's working 32 hours a week. I only want to work 32 hours a week. I am not looking for it. All of a sudden, they're all working only 32 hours a week.
well, that'd be great if we had enough employees where they're all getting their boots on this 32-hour.
No, but that's, I'm just,
But
that's
it-
what's on my brain.
so are you just worried about that 8-hour deficit then happening across the board? Is that your concern?
Well, that's another, that's one I just laid out, yeah.
Yeah, I guess to me. That's gonna come up when they get hired. And their pay rate's gonna be based on either 32 hours or 40-hour work. You know, and just arbitrarily throwing numbers out, so. A guy that's the 40-hour of commensurate work responsibilities is getting $10 an hour, and the 32-hour guys, then he's gonna be, well, he's still gonna get $10 an hour, but he's only gonna get paid $320 instead of $400.
Right,
So it's,
Okay.
financially, it's not a burden, where financially we take a hit. Is then on that 32-hour guy, he's benefiting because he's getting 20% more benefits than the 40-hour people are.
Only health insurance
Well,
because.
paid time off,
Nope,
That's
paid time off is
prorated.
prorated.
Well,
Prorated.
vacation time, isn't
Yeah, it is
prorated.
prorated.
it?
$2
I mean,
full-
holidays, holiday hours.
Yep, the prorate those too.
All right,
We did for Anna, when
Okay.
she was a part-time employee.
all right, okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Chris.
the flip side of this, and I understand the advocacy and the reason. It's like an employee working 32 hours is better than no one working 0. But here's the other side. We hold Ethan to a standard for work. He's got to accomplish the work of the entire place. He's got a mission, he's got a PD, he's going to have a performance evaluation. So if everybody suddenly decides to go to 32 hours a week, then that becomes a management challenge.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, it,
The
you know.
policy says 32. They can
Right,
do it.
but that also becomes a management challenge because he's ultimately responsible for all of the
Here,
tasks
get the
in his
job done.
PD for getting the job done.
You gotta, I have to approve a schedule change. You don't get to just make up your own schedule. And so it's not like somebody can just come in and decide what they want to do. If somebody is working for you, they say, you know what, I'd rather only work 32, and to me, that's not gonna work out. I can say no, they can still leave,
Okay.
but without having the option, you know, for maybe a different scenario where somebody has a unique circumstance, a life situation that occurs, they just can't quite do the 40. I know that the person's a good employee. Maybe I'd like to have the option to still retain. You know, this gives me options, management options, not, there's no mandate that I accept somebody to, you know, work 32. That's it.
One of the comments you made earlier, and I want to explore this just a little bit, was either more flexible time or repayment. So, under that concept. Theoretically, they'll have to pay more. So that's gonna get to your standing question of what's all this gonna cost, because theoretically, we shouldn't have to pay a premium. Especially if we're gonna be going to this kind of flexible hours. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, this gives us options. What we would see as a hit on having a 30, we had a quality 30, like, I'm just phrasing this, if I decided to go the route, letting somebody get full health insurance benefits while working 32 hours a week. I mean, that amount of extra, if it's a quality employee that I couldn't retain because they can't do the 40 for whatever personal reasons they've got, and they're doing stuff. And one of my best employees works like intermittently 10 hours a week. You know, I'll keep her. Because, matter of fact, we gave her a raise. So just, we have to be a little nimble on what we've got there. This switch allows me to do that.
I understand the other policy. I understand this.
And the board could tell me no if I wanted to go down to 32 hours a week and still be a full-time employee.
Okay, I mean, I understand it, but it's like. I'm slowing down.
So I'm still gonna put up with the math. I work 31 hours.
Well, the 30, 31, so that's.
You're part-time.
Just make it 30 hours a week, my question statement.
I think we should,
32 hours a week.
I think we should make this consistent with what the government policy is.
And what does it say again?
Okay, so it says. 32,240, but let's get rid of the hyphen.
I'm sorry, I can't.
Get rid of the hyphen. It's 32,240. And then hours per week. No, but not hour more, hours per week. And or 130 hours per month. Period. Get rid of that on a regular basis. That's pretty much.
All right, what does it say for a part-time?
Is 32 hours per week, period. 30 hours per week, I mean, 30 hours per week,
30.
30.
No, it has to be 32, otherwise you've got to get it.
Well, that's just how it's written in the rules.
It's that.
What is that per month?
Doesn't say, it says, well,
120.
it says or less than 130. Or less than 130.
Oh, that's gonna really drive the kid crazy.
Let me find that.
Because there's always gonna be that employee that's gonna test that line, right?
Dare I say the IRS is wrong.
Or
I work 31.8 hours. What are you
I
gonna do with
know,
me now?
I know,
Yeah.
that's right. Or in 1 month out of the entire year, I work
Whether it's
32, so where's
average-
my health insurance?
Or. Whatever the language is, we're talking about. Not a one-time deal. I mean, you're hired on as a full-time employee, and that week you work 31 hours. So that doesn't make one time make you a part-time employee.
And it sounds like, if I'm understanding, that this is a really new concept for me, so it's taking me a while to wrap my head around this. It sounds like there's lots of sideboards. You, as the engineer, would have to approve it. Everything's prorated. Right? Am I capturing all of this correctly? There's a lot of,
Except for the health insurance, which we don't have dialed in yet, but you can't prorate. Health insurance from That's my understanding.
Yeah, you're not eligible for health insurance at less than 32 hours a week.
That's something I don't wanna, that's true, and I wanna stick with that. All right, thank you. What do you think?
Have we reached agreement? Or are we still wanting to, more information? Other than that.
I hear Teresa's, old school thoughts on this. I share those immensely. But it's consistent with federal employment law, so I guess that's where I gotta be consistent.
I'm cool with it. I'm good with it. Thank you for pointing out my old school.
I admit, I'm right with you. It's like,
I do too.
Raise your hand if you're old.
frankly, until it was raised, I never even considered it.
Yeah.
I work 40 hours a week, 3 hours a week.
Okay.
Always working
The next one is
40 hours a week, yeah.
Yeah, 6 days a week, 10-hour days. Yeah.
All right, 4.01. Yes, I want to see at least head nods before we go any further. I see that's sort of a circular.
Ken's got me looking at D and I'm really struggling with the math too. So, but if that's federal and state policy, we can't change that number. So
Well, we can, but it's just consistent.
it won't be consistent. Okay. Yes, I'll go along with this. Force my head to
Yes,
no.
head nod. Yes. Okay, so were we further, let's see, any questions? I will take a motion to approve. Let's see that section number. 4.01.
I'll
Is
make,
there a 4.01 below there too?
yeah,
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna mess with this later. Let's just assume we'll get the number straightened out.
okay, I'll make a motion to approve
Employee times.
section 4.01 A and B as modified under policy set forth.
Wow.
Because we had approved earlier, this is modifying it. Okay. So motion by Roger. Second by Teresa. Okay, any further comments or questions? Okay, public comments or questions? Anybody online?
There's no one online.
Sufficiently bored down to extinction.
No, they hit their 32 hours. That's right out.
I'm not hitting mine too. We have a motion and a second, no further public comment. We close the public comment section, motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none. All right, you got it. Can we do one in 15 minutes?
I think you can.
All right.
This sounds simple.
Oh, yes, even us.
Yeah.
We're on a roll.
Just talk about it real quick about overtime, comp time, and required authorization. I'm kidding, we're not gonna tackle that. We need
Yeah,
to,
we'll be here till next week.
let's see. Sorry,
This has been a good test of my sense of liberality. Like if somebody's sick or dying, I'm all in, but I otherwise, sure.
Otherwise, get the job done.
Right here.
That's right.
You
No,
guys
totally.
Guys gave away the cake already.
Personal cell phone reimbursement agreements.
No, Georgia did.
Um, I'm looking to reimburse staff for using their cell phones. This is the agreement under which you would basically do what every staff member here is already doing. The benefits are that it would cost us a whole lot more money than this to buy cell phones for staff. We are actively routing our office calls to cell phones when somebody's got a need to work remotely for some other reason. We all have soft token identification tools to access databases on our personal cell phones. They are essential. They can't do without them. We do field mapping, GPS, all sorts of stuff with them. We still do maintain a policy that staff cell phone numbers are not for distribution outside of the what we call the inner circle of our clientele. But that's because we can route our office phones to them. So what's this cost you? I would like this, I'm suggesting a $30 per pay period stipend for staff, which is a fraction of the cost of buying cell phones and paying for the type of service that they carry. And I am suggesting that we make that retroactive to pay for cell phone reimbursements for staff that have already been doing it while we don't have a policy in place.
Let me ask on the retroactive, he's retroactive to
when they were hired.
and roughly speaking, what percentage do you estimate $30 to take care of this? Out of a person's the cost of the cell phone.
Like half of their service. Probably.
Why do we say half?
So my contract is for getting there. It's $122 for 4 lines for a month. So that's $30 a month, it'd be full payment on that. On my contract.
Because you have multiple lines.
Multiple lines.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. So I was thinking half, but I see Tracy's thought. So half up to the maximum $30. The reason I say half is because half could be a lot less than 30.
Yes. Have we calculated have you calculated what this would cost us? I would like to know that. Pat.
To buy cell phones and stuff?
No, to do this retroactively to the beginning. I'm just curious what it would cost. Like, if,
I don't have that number right here.
okay,
You can,
okay.
we can do that.
Well, the retroactive piece, well, we can take on, that's the question of this is, we want this one.
So I'm Googling this.
It's $30 pay period, $60 in a month, right?
Times 26.
So it's $30 a pay period?
Yes,
That's what this is.
780 a year.
Yes, so this is
$30 a month. I didn't.
60 a month.
30 times 26 pay periods, 780.
without, you know, I'm not sure I have enough information in my head. Yay or nay? I like the idea of a cell phone reimbursement. I just don't know if you're not to do.
Well, at $30 a pay period, that's $60 a month. That's okay for the entire, so I agree with you, that I would go with $30 a month. What I would say, that's half.
Different question, your employees understand the ramifications.
That's another good question, because I use my phone for work for years, always under the conceptual fear that something legal would happen and somebody would beat my phone and take my phone and take my phone and have access to all of my personal stuff in the phone. So because it's a personal phone, I was always afraid of that.
You know,
Is that what you're?
Yes,
Yeah, I
exactly
think
what I did. So I would never use my phone substantially for anything. So once you get in discovery, your whole life is kind of being bare. But you do use your phone. I answer it, I don't send any text messages of any substance.
Text messages. And they wouldn't know if you said anything of substance without looking at it. So, I mean, I hear you. I've had this discussion a lot, and I've been through a lot of litigated activities over the years. You know, we do have a standing policy not to discuss, you know, matters of merit other than logistics of when you're gonna be at the office. And that is a standing policy. We can add that actually into it. A new iPhone, if I were to cash you $1,000.
I know. I think something.
Yeah, so on top of your service, you know, there's a benefit to people showing up with their phone.
I think that for me, the fundamental question, are we? So many OE employee functions require the use of smartphones. So not every employee hired would necessarily be required to have a smartphone.
I don't envision having somebody here that wouldn't be a smartphone.
That wouldn't need a smartphone.
Yeah. The state database, right out.
Okay.
Well, we all have to have this two-factor system. Authentication.
Yeah.
That's in particular to each of us. Our computers will ultimately need that as well.
Yeah. So then, is it many or is it all OE?
I see what you're getting at.
Yeah, see,
Bad language.
no, I'm just asking I'm just asking the question.
Is that something we have to put in the position description?
Yeah.
You must have a smart.
Yeah, you must have a smartphone. Yeah, you would. That would be part of, would be part of the interview and the position description, kind of like having a valid driver's license.
Right, so this, the reason it says many is that, I don't know what all we're gonna hire people for.
Yeah,
So, I thought, maybe some contract employees may not be in this arrangement. All of them would have to go through, you know, an approval process.
yeah.
Well,
But that was all.
I can't imagine today's day and age, especially the generational differences, that they won't have a smartphone. However, I'm not sure that this means we're requiring them to have one. We can't require somebody to have it.
We use the word require right there.
Yeah,
No, but I'm
you
with
can't
you.
require somebody to have a phone. personal phone, that's their choice.
But I'm thinking
And if
of,
they choose not to have a personal phone, then we'll have to provide them with a one.
Which I really don't want to do. And that's why I want to incentivize, which is why it's a generous stipend. Because A, it's stuff I don't have to deal with. I have a lot of things I already deal with, this can just go right in the compensation plan and our payroll reimbursement.
This says functions require the use of, it does not say you're required to buy a smartphone.
okay,
Because if they don't buy it, say, I don't want to buy a smartphone. If I work here, if you want me to do this work, you gotta provide me with a smartphone.
Yeah.
So I can do that work. I mean, that's the other way that that's gonna go. I don't think it's require them to. So when I heard require, I don't think they were requiring me to buy a phone.
have a good.
Yeah.
So I just Googled some of this. So there is a labor code 2802 that requires employees to reimburse their staff for use of cell phones. Just in case you didn't know, I didn't know that. And that cell phone stipends, which is what this would be, are considered a non-taxable benefit. So it is a nice little perk to put in there if that factors where we fall down on the number.
427, let's go back to the bottom where the
Yes.
numbers are and decide if we want to go with those numbers or something different.
So the question was $30 a month or 60, right? If it's $30 a pay period.
Right.
And, okay, not to muddy the water, but is it $30 a pay period for full-time employees and or part-time employees? And 'cause if they're not here that last 8 hours using their phone, then, you know, well, if they're home playing Candy
I
Crush,
think
do
you
they
just
get,
gotta say
you know,
full-time employee, period. You can't differentiate that.
yeah, just for full-time employees.
Yeah, full time.
Well, you can still prorate. If you're 32, you can still prorate.
You just gotta, well, but we've already defined full-time employee. But
Right, but see, I can define this stipend based on your hourly schedule.
Yeah,
Policy, say
Yeah.
full time.
that's what I'm saying.
for full time.
I personally don't have a problem with 30 per pay period, because if you do the math, you're still coming out far below the cost of what a phone would cost if you had to buy one for an employee. I run a small business and I run it almost entirely off this phone, you know? So I get that, but I guess we have to factor in it's a non-tax benefit too. So even at 30 a month, it's a nice little perk. So,
You're likely to have to do the insurance too. You know, using your phone, you
gotcha.
more likely to want to do that.
Yeah, okay. I can be swayed either way.
Mr. Chairman, it's 4:30.
Yeah, so what do you want to do? I'm okay with the cell phone payment. I do not know what the amount is. Still there.
So my former employee had a policy, but I don't know what it is. I would have to go dig into their personnel employee manual and find out if you want me to bring that back or not. Just for comparison purposes.
Yeah, it's something to look at. The other is for someone to do the math. Figure out, what does this mean?
I thought we just did, that's like. Most of the people here, they've been about a year.
Well, that's not the part I'm very, thinking about is $30 a acre.
Yeah,
Well-
780 annually.
So according to this, the US average cell phone reimbursement for employees is $30 per month. It can vary across states, but that is the national average
Per month.
per month.
I thought there was a reason it was 30.
It's 30 more.
Smaller companies on average reimburse their employees in the range of 30 to 40 per month, but it's per month, not per pay period.
All right, so I'm gonna pull. 50% of their cost up to a maximum of $30 a month. Because I don't know if we're gonna run,
I like
just-
it.
Okay,
I mean, unless you wanna,
I like it.
I don't want to have to collect their bills. You know, like, that's a bunch of extra work for me. What is this, do you know what the state reimbursement is?
I don't know, everybody's.
well then, in lieu of that, I would just recommend $30.
$30 a month,
30 a
we
month.
can always.
Yes.
If we need to
Yes.
adjust, we can adjust. All right. Per month,
Mhm.
we change it to per month. Is the rest of the language okay? And we want to approve that section now.
What's,
Is it
What's the-
4.01?
I'll make a motion to approve section 12.1. I guess the whole thing now.
We hadn't approved it before, had we? We're not modifying it, so this is our first approval of this one.
I think we should wait and figure out what the state does.
All right,
I'll second that motion.
we have a. Did you make a motion?
Yeah, I
A
mean,
motion and a second. We have a proposal to wait. We vote or we wait.
well, it's that's discussion.
We're at discussion.
So there's a motion and a second on the floor. It's
We're at discussion.
according, yeah.
We don't
I
have
guess
to
we can
vote.
see what the state and the tribes do for this to be consistent, to make sure we're reflecting both.
I mean, frankly, we're reacting to this because our engineer brought forward, he's now recommending we wait until we get more information. The motion in a second, what do you want to do? Motion and second stand,
Mhm.
motion and second all, so any other public comment? Let me get on the record with public comment. Any public comments on this? No public online? No public online, no more public comment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, you got it. We want to revisit the change. All right, till after 4:30. So we're going to close this regular session and go into the executive session. Right of privacy, I don't know what the exact language is, but right of privacy, we're going to talk about some personnel matters, right of privacy is outweighs the.
We have 3 minutes to adjourn. Be right back.
Outweighs the need for public information. We're going to adjourn to executive session.
Thank you, Tim.
Meeting adjourned.